What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. My name is Ewan, and welcome back to F1 Fantasy in general. We have survived the long April break due to the cancellations in the Middle East, and we have the Miami Grand Prix race this weekend. I am so excited. Today's episode is going to be a little just Miami Grand Prix F1 Fantasy refresher, because over the last month, if you've been checked out from F1 Fantasy, I totally understand it, but I've been putting out content every week. I think 2 episodes every week almost. I think I took like 1 week off. So go check that out on my playlist. But today is going to serve as a little refresher for everything you need to know ahead of the Miami Grand Prix for F1 Fantasy. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are new around here, because it goes a long way to helping out the channel. But let's get into your Miami Grand Prix F1 Fantasy refresher. So a little bit of a track preview here at the Miami International Autodrome, 19 corners, 57 laps. I'm guessing there's about 4 straight mode zones, but we will find out early this week, or maybe today before this episode is even published. Actually, last 4 seasons, there's been 9th for overtakes and 8 DNFs, so 2 per race. It is a sprint weekend, so we'll have to take that into consideration. And then the 2025 podium was Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, and George Russell. Next up is the Pirelli preview here, 2025 tires C3, C4, C5, and they're bringing the same ones back to this race again. And then the weather, it looks like it's going to be very sunny all weekend, very dry mostly. 21% chance of rain on Sunday, according to the latest forecast, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. It is South Beach. There's going to be wild and wacky weather all over the place. So as the week progresses, check out my Twitter account, Blue Sky, X, or all those fun social media accounts at F1 Fantasy UN to keep an update on the weather. And as we go into the weekend schedule, like I said, it is a sprint weekend, so the F1 Fantasy deadline is a little bit different. It is the sprint race on Saturday, the first session on Saturday. So on Friday, we got free practice 1 and sprint qualifying. Saturday is the sprint and then main race qualifying, and Sunday is the race. Local time is US Eastern time, and then that's the UK time there as well. We also had some other schedule news over the April break. So first of all, because of the long April break, all these teams bring in updates, new regulations, and stuff like that. F1 has decided that FP1 is going to be 90 minutes long. So that's going to be pretty crucial for our F1 Fantasy data. So hopefully we'll get lots of kind of number crunching, simulation data from that. And also Turkey is returning to the F1 calendar in 2027 for 5 years. That's a pretty good contract for a new track, or a returning track to the F1 calendar, especially when you see that Portugal got one earlier this year, but that was only for 2027 and 2028. So F1 making a commitment to Turkey for 5 years as Istanbul, the Turkish Grand Prix, returns to the F1 calendar. Budget building breakdown. This is very simplified, but these are 5 drivers to buy, 5 drivers to sell, and 5 drivers that you're going to have to decide on in the B tier bracket. So in the buy column, I've got Liam Lawson, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, Sergio Perez, and Franco Colapinto, all with their numbers to avoid a price drop and get a max price rise there in the parentheses. In the sell column, I've got Hadjar, Bortoleto, Alonso, Albon, and Lance Stroll. And then in the decide column, it's Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Ollie Behrman, and Arvid Lindblad. Let's just touch on a couple of the drivers here real quick. Liam Lawson, Nico Hülkenberg are easy buys this week. A lot of us already have Liam Lawson in our squads. I'm not getting rid of Esteban Ocon. You can hear that maybe my cat does not like that decision to keep Esteban Ocon. But those are the 3 drivers I would prioritize. Sergio Perez, he's still in a Cadillac. Not sure how confident I feel having him in my team, but he is getting the job done for right now. And Frank Colapinto, I had Adam from FanApp Fantasy on the channel earlier this month, or in April, and we were kind of talking about how Frank Colapinto is getting the job done, but we don't think he has a long-term, kind of sustainable price rise kind of equation going on with the way he is racing. And I believe that is 6 points for a max price rise there. In the sell column, Hadjar, Bortoleto, Alonso, Albon, Stroll. Don't really need to talk about these too much. Hadjar is interesting because he could avoid a price fall. I just don't think Red Bull has the car yet. We'll see what happens this weekend to get 24 points. Maybe in a sprint weekend, he can eke out a max price rise. Gabby Bortoleto, I think he's in a void for the Miami Grand Prix, but once that DNS from the Chinese Grand Prix drops off, he will be an option for us in Canada in a couple of weeks. And Alonso, Albon, and Stroll, I don't need to really go into them. Where you have to make your critical lineup decisions is going to be between this decide column here. Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, Ollie Behrman, and Arvid Lindblad. Behrman, 5 points to avoid a price drop. So you can hold him. However, once that Chinese Grand Prix sprint race drops off of his 3 race rolling average, it's going to be hard for Ollie Behrman to continue to rise. So I am looking at shipping off Ollie Behrman in some of my teams in F1 Fantasy. We'll get into that in my team selection. And then Arvid Lindblad, 20 points since the Australian Grand Prix. He has been a little bit on a downward trend, so we'll see what the rookie does in FP1 and sprint qualifying, see if he can surprise us in that Racing Bulls. Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, they're all just kind of at these weird price points where Valtteri Bottas, we're just waiting for him to hit the price floor, and then Pierre Gasly and Carlos Sainz, that's in like that 12, 13 million range, which in a few races time, when we get to the next level of budget building, maybe they'll be helpful, but I think not a lot of us can get there right now. It is a great time to become a pole sitter and support the F1 Fantasy Pole Position channel that little bit extra. So for $5 a month, you can get early access to videos like this, Discord access, monthly power rankings. We did April. For May, I'm just going to have to figure out a different members only because we have not had a race to kind of go with the power rankings. 2026 prize leagues, member shoutouts, loyalty badges, and custom emojis in the chats whenever I do live streams. So shout out to Mark, Michael, Rebecca, Andy, Benads, Muncie, Jables, JB, Will, Nick, the Iceberg, Doke, Andres, Impulsive888, Ben, Jason, and Nigel the Crab. Thank you all for supporting the channel that little bit extra. And then the South Beach chip strategy here, I believe that there is an option to kind of play any chip in Miami. However, if you look through all these reasons, autopilot, if you're sticking with the 2A driver build for one more race, you could kind of go with whatever. If the data is inconclusive and you have like Leclerc and Hamilton, Leclerc and Piastri, Leclerc and Antonelli, or Piastri and Antonelli, and you think that maybe McLaren can squeak it out, it could be a good weekend for the autopilot. 3x boost, one/both of the Mercedes drivers plus a Ferrari or McLaren driver for this weekend, just depending on how the updates look there. And if you are sticking on that 2A driver build for one more race, it could be a great opportunity to get that chip out of the way. Final fix is situational. Piastri in Australia, Bortoleto in China sure would have been useful there. Limitless, if you are on a max budget gain after the Japanese Grand Prix and 6 of your 7 assets are set to rise in Miami, could be a good weekend for Limitless. However, I still think the low overtrack, we saw it in Japan, it was a big delta. It worked out for a lot of us that played Limitless there. And then no negative, still a new set of regulations, updates on the cars, make them less reliable, plus Miami's weather. Remember what happened last year in the sprint? I was on a plane and I did not even know that a monsoon had swept into Miami. And it hurt a lot when I landed in Houston, and it was just like, oh no, what have I done? And then the wild card, if you're looking at a negative 20 to get into the preferred 2A constructor build or to get out of this budget building disaster that maybe you have found yourself in. But like I said, I'm going to keep this episode short and sweet, so let's just get right into my team selection. So here are my 3 teams in F1 Fantasy. They're all in the top 17K in the world. That T2 squad is in the top 400 in the world, which is kind of crazy to think about after 3 races of the season. So I'm just going to go quickly through my plans here, but I will have a live stream on Thursday night, a Q&A stream, and then final thoughts episode, and then a deadline stream, but potentially not at the deadline. I'll keep you guys in the loop for that. So let's just go through all these quickly. The T1 squad right now is Leclerc, Antonelli, Ocon, Behrman, Lawson with Ferrari and Haas. I think it's time to switch this team over to the 2A constructor build, and I can do that quite simply with Leclerc out and Haas out. I appreciate your service, Haas. You guys have been awesome. And bring in Mercedes and then bring in Nico Hülkenberg here. I do have one more free transfer, so I've got 3 free transfers on this team, and there is a world where I look to bring out Ollie Behrman, because if you look at the budget builder here, if I replace Ollie Behrman's score with a 20, like he had 34 in 32, 34 in China. If I replace it with a 20 for the Miami Grand Prix and then he becomes 9.8 million, he still needs 21 points in Canada to get a price rise. So could I look ahead and potentially bring him out for the Miami Grand Prix, or do I just hope that he gets the 13 points and then in the following week in Canada, I could bring him out for a Gabby Bortoleto? However, this team may be set up quite well to get like max budget rising again after a sprint weekend, and I was wondering about playing the Limitless chip on this team. So do I be a little proactive and potentially bring in someone else like a Sergio Perez? But like I said, in that little budget building kind of wrap up that I had, I don't know if Sergio Perez is going to be a long-term hold in F1 Fantasy for us. So like a Colapinto, a Perez, Don't feel great about that kind of lineup there, but this would get me to the two-way constructor build quite easy. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Should I just keep Ollie Behrman, or should I switch over to like a Franco Colapinto or a Sergio Perez, or take the hit and go with Gabby Bortoleto for 1 week? I'm not sure with like some long-term budget rising in the future, but Ollie Behrman could get it done quite easily. So I might just stick with him as I transition into the two-way constructor build there. T2 squad is a little bit interesting here because right now I've got this two-way driver build. I played the Limitless chip in Japan. It went sparkling well. Bring out Russell, bring in Racing Bulls, and then we just bring in Mercedes, and that leaves me with an easy transfer to Nico Hülkenberg. However, I do not love this B-tier kind of construction here with Behrman, Colapinto, and Lindblad. I think when I get to Canada, I could be looking to bring all of those drivers out, just depending on how this weekend goes in Miami, especially Lindblad. So could I take a -10 to bring Lindblad out to an Esteban Ocon, who I think is going to rise, and then that kind of gets me back in the mold? Would that be worth a -10? Probably on a sprint weekend. I'd have to see what all these cars look like, obviously, in FP1 and sprint qualifying, but I am thinking about a -10 here in F1 Fantasy for this squad. So like I said, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Is your squad very similar to this? What will you be thinking about for your moves in F1 Fantasy this weekend? And then the T3 squad might be the trickiest of all because it is already in the 2A build, and I think it's doing quite well as well. So Antonelli, Bottas, Colapinto, Lawson, Lindblad, Mercedes, and Ferrari. I don't like Bottas. Has cost me so much money already this season, but I've been pretty much locked into him. So I can go Lindblad and Bottas out with 2 of my free transfers, and then I can bring Hülkenberg in, but then my options for that are Stroll and Bortoleto to kind of keep with this Mercedes and Ferrari mold. So if I refresh it and I bring Mercedes out for McLaren, who is like 1.6 million cheaper, and then I bring out Bottas and Lindblad, that can get me into a world where I can get Nico Hülkenberg, who's one of the easiest budget risers this weekend, and then 8.3 million left over lets me choose between Fernando Alonso, Arvid Lindblad, who I just brought out, and then Sergio Perez. So also another difficult decision. I guess another world is I could keep Lindblad and then try to... Can't really go anywhere else. Like, this is just a weird price point here. So I don't love this either, but I think maybe the simplest thing would just be to... I got to get Bottas out of this team. But is going Bottas to Hülkenberg just for the budget rising, and then I can't go with Lance Stroll. So do I just do this? That doesn't feel great either. I could get rid of Colapinto, but I don't think that's going to leave me with much more either, just 6.7 million. So I'm in this weird price point with this squad because Bottas has been costing me so much budget. He's not doing that great of a job for my squad, and this has a lower budget than the other 2 teams. I think the T2 squad is at 109.9 and this T1 is 109.5, but this one is way where we can even just check it out real quick. What is this cost cap here? I've got in this team, because Bottas has been costing me 105.3. So this one is struggling a little bit compared to the rest of the squads. But those are my 3 teams in F1 Fantasy, and that's what I'm thinking about this weekend for the Miami Grand Prix on Monday, April 27th. And this has kind of been the refresher for the Miami Grand Prix. So I hope you guys have all appreciated it. But that'll do it for this quick Miami Grand Prix refresher. Like I said, I did a ton of videos over the April break, so go check those out if you want a little bit more of a deep dive into any of the content that I've produced over this April break. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. All that is just a little bit of support that really helps the channel out. And if you really want to go the extra mile, you can sign up for the YouTube membership program. $5 a month, early access to videos like this, member shoutouts, live streams, all that fun stuff. But I will be back multiple times this week. Like I said, live stream on Thursday, final thoughts on Friday night around midnight, probably my time. And then on Saturday, there will be a stream for at least a little bit. I'm actually traveling that day, so it's going to be a little bit tricky, but you can always follow me on X, Blue Sky, Threads, all that fun stuff at F1 Fantasy Ewan. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed the April break. Welcome back to F1 Fantasy. I'm so happy it is back. And once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.